go with a beginner's mind, like really just go there with wonder, with curiosity, and observe. I think the ability to observe is really, really important. Observe and listen, because it's like a gold mine out there if you can actually just listen and observe other people. Every culture, every place you go to, you start to discover when you're talking to somebody, you're not only learning about them, you're actually learning something about you.
Hi, Celeste. Welcome.
Hi, Rob. Thank
So,
you.
so I'm going to say a few things to give context to people. This is Celeste Chia, who I just met. And we met because we have a close friend in common who lives in Iceland and who had been bugging us to meet for many years when we were in different countries. And we finally got together, and Celeste delivered some wonderful chocolate from Iceland to me. But in the course of chatting, I started to discover that Celeste has had this amazing life and living in many different places, and kind of what I felt was a very unique story. And so I wanted to find out more and find out some of the background, the details that make that type of a diverse life possible. So thank you for joining me.
Well, thank you for inviting me. Thank you for this chat.
Great, great.
Yeah.
I'm excited to find out your story. So I'm gonna pick a spot that you mentioned to me when we were chatting, which was, you mentioned, I think going way back, you said that you were in Singapore, right? You were growing up in Singapore.
Yes.
And at a certain point, you said that you had this experience of, and please correct me because I'm probably remembering wrong, but you had this experience of like, is this all there is? Or that you wanted to see more of the world, right? And you became
Yes.
determined to go somewhere else. So can you say a little bit about that, like what that experience was like? And I think that's
Yeah.
what kicked off everything, right?
Yeah, sure. So we were, driving home after a visit to the bird park in Singapore. And like my 13-year-old brain was like, this is the seventh time I think we've been here. And I don't know just what came over me in the car. I thought about this and I thought, there's got to be more out there in this world. So I casually asked my dad if he'd send me off for college to study abroad. I honestly didn't think he was going to take me seriously. So he said, only if you get A's in your final year in secondary school, which is kind of equivalent to high school,
Okay.
except that we finish at 16, right?
Okay.
So I studied hard. I was determined that I was going to do this. I studied really hard, day and night. I got my A's, with the exception of a B for Mandarin Chinese, but he forgave me for that. And yeah, he fulfilled his promise, and decided to send me abroad. So,
Was
it
he shocked
seemed
that he had made this offer and that you actually did it?
I actually did it. Yeah, I don't know if he was shocked. I think um maybe there was something about him that was going like, okay, if she really does it, I'm gonna I'm I think this is gonna be good for her. My father, both my parents actually, they had this little thing in them. They loved traveling as well.
Mm,
So I think there was some sort of understanding underneath of all of this, right? They
mm,
understood. I mean, it was hard for them to let me go. Yeah,
mm,
but now looking back, I can say I'm so grateful to them and my siblings for basically setting me free, right?
mm,
It was a very, very, very expensive thing for him to do. It was
mm,
expensive for him to like come up with the money, right? We were
mm,
not super rich. I mean, we were just,
mm,
he was a professor. He was a school teacher.
mm.
So you can imagine, so yes. So that was it. That was my start. And it began journey of 40 years of my life. Now you know how old I am. And I just kept going.
And had you been abroad before that time?
Just traveling. We used to travel a lot to Malaysia.
Okay.
Um, but once we traveled as a family else, to the US,
Okay.
right? That was our one family vacation out of Singapore.
Okay.
But that was it. No, no.
Okay.
And quite frankly, I don't know where this thought of mine came from. It
Mm,
was just an inkling. And
mm,
I can't even explain it. It was just something that came out of me. And I suppose, some of us have that, right? We have this little fire in
mm,
our hearts that,
mm.
and that was me. And I just couldn't explain that one thought. Yeah.
So you were just excited. It doesn't sound like you were nervous at all to go abroad. I mean,
No,
wow. And so
no.
I know you landed initially in the States, right?
Yes. No,
Um,
sorry. I started in Canada.
oh, you started in Canada. Okay.
Yes. Yeah,
Okay.
I was too young to go to university in the States because you start at 18.
Ah,
So, and then a friend of mine she was going to go to Toronto because her brother was studying there.
mm.
So I just decided, okay, I can go there first, right? And so my parents agreed to that, and off we went. Yeah.
And you were there for a year, 2 years?
I was there for slightly less than a year.
Okay.
And then I got admitted to start university in Ohio, right? I
Okay.
applied to a few universities.
Mm,
Yes, but I chose Ohio because at that time it was one of the top three universities for journalism.
I see.
So
Okay.
so yeah.
Okay. And then how was that?
To be honest with you, when I first arrived, it was a bit like a shocking. I was in this small college town,
Mm,
and came from, Singapore, which is a big city, to Toronto, which is another big city, and then I landed in this small little town, and I felt so out of place. I literally called my father, and I was like, Get me out of here. Can I not go to Florida instead? Like, I can't do this.
so what did you do?
Uh,
Did you stay for a year or two or?
no, so basically I stayed at the university for like my bachelor's degree, right? The four
Okay.
years.
Mm,
I went to New York to work a little bit for less than a year, but then I got a scholarship to go back to Ohio to do my master's. So I
okay.
actually lived in Athens, Ohio for 6 years. No,
Wow.
no, total of no, so 5.5 years. Yeah, yeah.
Okay. So it worked out. Okay. Great. You got used to it.
I got used to it. It took me a couple of months, like with everything, and
Mm,
a couple of months to settle in and just to realize that there's no turning back.
mm, okay.
Um, and then I started to meet friends. Yes.
Yeah, I think that's a key moment. I know when I was an undergrad, I think after my first semester, I felt like I was struggling. I felt like I hadn't found my place, and I remember I was going to take a semester off and kind of get my head straight. And then right before the semesters changed, right before the winter break, I met two or three new friends that I really clicked with. And then I felt like, oh, okay, this feels good now. And I decided to stay. So yeah, I think that can
It
make a big
helps.
difference. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I
Um,
really, I really believe in social connection makes a lot of difference. Like in making a decision to stay, and yeah,
right. That's yeah, I think that's a key bullet point.
yeah.
And where did you go next?
Oh gosh, I had to actually think. Okay, no, so I once I graduated, I came to New York again, worked
Mm,
for a year, and then one day I was sitting like, at home, like in my little room that I rented in Queens. And the ceiling started to break off, right? In the paper ceiling, those ceilings. And then I heard mice, or for me, they were like rats, whatever.
Wow.
I just freaked out, and I called my friend. I had a friend, had a bunch of good friends actually that I met at college from Iceland.
Okay.
So, so, so I called, and we were just having a chat, and this friend of mine just goes, "Why don't you just come to Iceland?" And I was like, "Oh, that's an idea." And I was like, "All right."
Wow.
I literally had $1,000. I quit my job, and because I
Wow.
was like, I am not taking this. I mean, I was always broke, you know. I was always broke. I was spending all my money during the weekend partying and everything in New York City, but it's expensive, as you know.
It is. Yeah.
And so I quit my job, and I was like, I'm leaving. I'm going to Iceland. I have no idea what to expect.
So you had no
But
plan.
no plan.
Wow.
Yeah, I was a bit of a crazy 20-odd-year-old person,
Hmm.
but I had no plan, but I kind of knew I was going to be okay. I think the only thing that worried me was like disappointing my parents,
Hmm. Hmm.
as they paid for my schooling, and all of a sudden I'm just going, oh, I'm going to go to Iceland, what are you going to do? I don't know. But I mean, literally had $1,000. I wasn't like, by that point, I wasn't relying on money from my dad anymore.
Hmm.
I made my own money, and it was time to go. Yeah.
Hmm. That's amazing. So you had some sense that it would work out, but you were concerned about disappointing your parents a little bit. And and then what happened when you got there?
Oh, I had so much fun. I mean, I literally, my friends embraced me, their families welcomed me, spent Christmas with their families, and
Hmm.
I had a great time. I mean, the when I got there though, like, after 2 weeks, I got a temporary job.
Hmm. Great.
Um, and and at that time it was, a lot of people, a lot of foreigners who went there. I mean, there were not that many foreigners who went to Iceland at that time, but those that did actually, worked at the fish factories, or, just to get some like experience, right?
Yeah.
And mine was, I got a job in a chocolate factory, which was a little bit
Wow.
more luxurious for me.
Wow.
And and I was having so much fun, because the bottom line is that, you know, growing up in Singapore, I was, sheltered in the sense that, it's all more about schooling,
Hmm.
going to school. We were not like told to like go out and work and make some extra money.
Hmm.
We didn't have that, right? So for me, working in a chocolate factory, boxing chocolates and then coming home with them, like the remnants, whatever, the chocolate that didn't go in the boxes,
The
I just took
broken
them home. The
pieces.
broken pieces, yeah, yeah, exactly, yeah, yeah. The licorice chocolate that I brought you, those those ones,
Was that
yeah.
the company? No.
Actually not that company. That
Okay.
wasn't the
All right.
company. Yeah.
Okay.
But anyway, I did that for a couple of months, and then I got another job. Yeah. Waitressing. And mind you, I'd never waitressed before.
Wow. That's amazing. And Iceland is like a small town, really. Like there are very
Yeah.
few people, right? So
Yeah. There's
um
about like 310,000 people, I think,
yeah.
in the whole of Iceland. Yeah.
And that's yeah. I mean that's gone up. I remember the first time I went there, the population was, I think, less than the population in East Village where I am. So for me to think like, oh my God, a whole country, and our friend Helga, if we talk about anybody, like she's going to know somebody who knows those people. Like
Yes.
everybody knows everybody in some way. It really is a village.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
wow,
It is
that's
a village.
wonderful.
Yeah.
And I know we're probably skipping ahead, but I'm curious where your journey took you next.
So my journey took me to the next one was actually to Italy. I got married to an Icelander,
Mm,
and we moved to Italy together, and we stayed there for a couple of years um, in Milano,
mm,
and um, and then we moved to England, to London, and we stayed there for a couple of years before moving to Spain for his work, right?
wow. Okay.
So I also lived the life of like an expat, like
Mm,
wife, going along the journey
mm,
as well. Although it was more like, the two of us teamed up to discover something new, right? Um, so yeah, so we moved to Barcelona, Spain, and that's where we stayed for a long time, and I stayed for a long time. Now
okay.
that's now he's now my ex-husband, but
Hmm.
I continued to stay for I think a total of 11 years.
Okay.
So yeah.
And how many languages were you speaking by then?
So that would then be an addition. Well, so I learned Icelandic, Italian, and then Spanish. Yeah,
Wow. Okay.
yeah,
Amazing.
yeah.
Wow. That's a lot of countries. That's amazing.
That's a lot of countries, and but yeah, my journey has been more like a mix of like me wanting to go out and explore the world,
Mm,
um, and plus me and my husband moving because of his job, right?
mm,
Um, and then and then and then and then me taking off again, and you know trying something new. So whenever I would travel, like would travel just for pleasure, I would
mm,
discover something new, and I'll go like, oh, I wouldn't mind living here, you
mm.
know and that's what I did. So while I was actually living in Barcelona, I went traveling, and to Brazil, and I had some really good friends there too. In fact, they had lived in Barcelona, so we went together. We did the Carnival. We actually participated in the Carnival.
Wow.
And I was just totally intrigued with that country. And then I said to myself in 2000, I think it was like 2002, I think, and I said, one day I'm coming back here to Rio de Janeiro, and one day I'm going to work here. And I just said
Mm,
it to myself, right?
mm.
I'm going to do this. And I didn't know how it was going to happen. Um, but I guess I manifested it. It
Mm.
happened. I got the opportunity at a later date, years down the road, to do it. Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting because the when you were when you were finishing school, you had this idea, I want to live somewhere else. I want to go abroad. And you found your way to Canada and then to the States. And
Yeah.
then with Iceland, it just sort of the opportunity presented itself and you said yes. It's I think a lot of us have opportunities that maybe, somebody says, I mean, certainly Helga said to me, like, oh, you should come to Iceland. But I probably said no for a couple of years before I ever said yes. Actually, the first time that I went to Barcelona, um, somebody had stayed with me here in the city for like a month in a different apartment, and he was from Barcelona, and it never even occurred to me, oh, I can go there also. Um, and then it seems like with Brazil, you have this idea like I want to go there, and it was very specific. And then, like you said, you manifested it. So I guess as we're talking, I'm realizing there's kind of two ways it can happen. I think when I went to Japan, I had been considering Japan for many, many years, and kind of I was oscillating between yes, I want to go, and
Yeah.
no, I'm not sure if I want to go, and kind of oscillating. Um, and then other times, an opportunity presents itself and you just go, right? So
Yeah, and it is, I mean, I oscillate as well, right? From time to time, it's not, you know, sometimes you're just like, I mean, in fact, I think it's because all of a sudden you're struck with a bit of like, not only fear, but more about, am I being like, is it too rash,
mm,
I'm not being normal here because, people are starting to settle themselves. People are starting to buy houses. All my friends are starting to get that. They're having families. Am
mm,
I responsible? And I used to question myself about that, right? So
mm,
there could be many, many reasons for not moving forward, right? Whether
mm,
it's, for you could have been starting a business,
mhm.
is this the right time to go? And it's easier to do it when you're young. I mean, so when I went to
Yes.
Iceland, I was young. I
Hmm.
didn't care. I had $1,000. So what? I'll be okay. My friends are there, right?
Hmm.
When I went to Italy, yes, there were two of us. Okay, so yes, I needed to find a job, but if one person's got a job, then all right, let's balance this out, right? We can do
Hmm.
it. Um, it as you get older, and as I got older, I question myself,
Mm,
right? I do. So you do get yourself stuck, and you go, okay, no, let me be responsible. Let me start saving my money. At this point in my life now, let me save my money as much as I can for retirement because you know what I mean? Yeah.
you know, it's funny. I mean, this is a very rich topic, and I know that this idea of sort of helping people who want to explore, that's sort of a part of the coaching work that you do. And I think how people respond to their beliefs in relation to any of these ideas is so critical. And the one thing I would say is that naturally we're going to have certain beliefs or concerns come up. I think that's natural for people. The one thing I would say, whether you're young or in mid-career or late career, is to really pressure test those beliefs in a way. um, I think a lot of people like believe that they can't afford something, and I have the utmost respect for that, by the way. That I don't want to question that. I'm not saying that like, oh, you should go have a posh lifestyle. But I remember years ago, I met this woman who was a barista at Starbucks, and I would go there every day, and we would chat. And at one point, I was talking to her, and she said, "Well, I'm going to be leaving soon." I said, "Where are you going?" She said, "Well, I'm going to travel around the country, and then I'm going to travel around the world." And I said, "Oh, that's amazing. How are you doing that?" And she said, "Oh, Rob, one thing I'm really good at is I'm really good at saving money."
Okay.
And so it wasn't like she had money from another source. She had worked there for a year or two, and she had saved. And she told me, she said, "I played this game. I get my check. I put a certain amount aside for savings, and then I play a game of like, how much can I stretch the rest of the money for the rest of the week, And
Yeah.
and it was amazing. And this was actually another person said that they used to think, should I get a frappuccino today, or should I make it myself and then I can drink a frappuccino when I go to Paris?
I
And I
love
thought
that.
that's
Yeah.
such a great little tactic to motivate you to save. So
Yeah. Yeah.
um,
Yes.
especially now looking back, I think there were times when I didn't necessarily travel or do something like that. Maybe I took a more conservative approach. And in retrospect, I don't think I would have been derailing myself had I traveled at the time. So
Yeah.
um, but
Yeah, it's true. It's your beliefs on finances and your beliefs. And it's not only that, I think it's also sometimes it's societal pressures, other people's
yes,
opinions, right?
very much.
It's got a strong hold on you. And and this concept of being irresponsible comes up, especially when you get older, right? And but then, but I think if anybody were to question and ask me, you know, if would you have changed anything? No, not a chance, right? No way. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, especially now, I think there are many ways of honoring the desire to be responsible and have a rich lifestyle. I mean, I have one friend, and she and her family, like they travel. They, you know, they do it on a budget, but they travel and travel and travel and travel, you know, so it's a way of, they're still honoring family, but together they all have this spirit of adventure. So
Yeah. No, that's
and
great.
yeah, yeah. So
Yeah.
okay, so you lived in Iceland, Italy, Barcelona. You went to Brazil.
Right.
Um,
Yeah, two parts, two different places in Brazil. One, you know, one was Salvador, and then after that, I lived in Rio de Janeiro at two different times.
Wonderful.
And then, you know, then I went back to Barcelona, and put my put my feet on the ground and started working hard. And yeah, sorry, no, not after. No, I went back to London. That's what I did. I did
Oh, that's right,
London.
London too.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. So yeah,
Okay.
so I've been going, and I've been to a couple of countries twice, right? Twice or three times. And yeah, then I went back to Barcelona, and then now I'm in the US. Yeah, in New York.
Now, it seems like in most cases, except for when you went to, well, even with Toronto, you had somebody that you knew there.
Yes.
Usually, do you know somebody, or are you traveling with somebody, or have you ever just gone to a new place just completely by yourself?
No, I think in most of the places I knew somebody, right?
Okay.
Now, whether they're in that same city, it's a different question. I knew, for example, when I went to Brazil, I knew somebody, but not in the same city,
Okay.
right? So I just went, I went on my own. I got myself I stayed in a hostel, for a whole month. Um, only to find out that the hostel were just only men in there, except for
Except for you? Wow. Amazing.
to share the bathrooms.
Wow.
But and I think, so yes, I didn't, of course I knew people in the country, right? But for example, Brazil is so huge, right? So yes, I landed in Sao Paulo and then to Rio, right? But then and I knew that if there's anything I needed, I could always call my friend who,
Okay.
lives elsewhere. Yeah. Yeah.
So I'm going to ask you like a more extreme question in a way, because I think it's in my head, and it's probably in other people's heads as well. You know, when you're traveling, how do you make yourself safe, or how do you make yourself feel safe?
Mm.
Or, is there anything you're doing, any steps to ensure and to check that you are safe? Because, I know you're quite bold, but it doesn't seem like you're reckless, I wouldn't say.
No, no, I check, I find out about the places I'm going to. Like, let's say, okay, this hostel was, it was for everybody, but it just happened to be that was just all men in there, but which is fine. It's just I think it's, going. I would always research. I know I would definitely research. I will also make sure that if I needed anything or any help, I knew the embassy to contact, for example.
Okay.
But I'm also very, very street smart, right? I'm cautious and street smart. So I learned over the many years, especially as a woman walking around, you don't, where you should be going. I would talk to the locals and find out like
Right.
where can I go and where shouldn't I go to. I wouldn't stray so far on my first days, right? I won't just go, you know, crazy. Uh, and but I'll talk to the locals. And I think that helped me a lot. And I did mention once we had that conversation, I'm a bit of an introvert, right?
Mm-hmm.
But when I go to a new country, I almost have an opportunity to um, break out of that. I have this opportunity. Nobody knows me, right? So I
Mm,
actually have this opportunity to be me, I suppose. Just go out and just force myself to talk to people because I know that's the only way you're going to feel okay, you know?
mm,
And and I would force myself to go out and talk to people. And it's not really forcing because I do like I like the whole social contact,
mm,
but it brings something different out of you. Like every culture, every place you go to, you start to discover when you're talking to somebody, you're not only learning about them, you're
mm,
actually learning something about you.
mm,
And so you break out of your little shell, right?
mm,
And I love doing that. I just break out of my shell. I'm in some place new, nobody knows me, and I can be who I want to be, right?
mm,
And I think that's what helped me a lot is I talk to people, I ask them a lot of questions.
mm,
I try to, even if I don't know the language, I try to use whatever I've learned, whether it's
mm,
from, Googling or whatever, I'll just
mm,
find a way, right?
mm, mm,
I mean, I feel, I got bolder and bolder because I started to learn all these different languages and it helped. Even if you didn't really, for example, like with Portuguese, I mean, um, you know, I listen to like Brazilian music. Okay, so and then I would and I would understand some words. And then I would
mhm,
use Spanish. I'll throw Italian in there and we'll just mix it all up, right? And when people see that you're actually trying
mm,
to communicate with them, they'll help you out. They'll
mm,
and I think that's so important, right? It's really embedding yourself in there. Yeah.
mm. And in talking to these people, like when you moved to Brazil, and especially when you were staying at the hostel, did you make a lot of friends? Did you?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes, I
right.
did. At the hostel, I made a lot of friends. Anything again, it's about being open, always entering like with a beginner's mind,
Mm,
always
mm,
entering and coming to a new place with like wonder, right?
mm,
This openness, this curiosity, and no biases, no preconceived ideas of anything. And I think when you do that and you open up, people open up to you. And so at the
mm,
hostel, I started talking to everybody. They came from everywhere. All these guys came from everywhere, and I felt protected. They took care of me. They were like,
that's
okay,
great.
they're like, okay, girl, don't go out at this time of night. If you want to go out, ask one of us to go with you. Yeah, yeah.
That's great.
So
Wow, that's
yeah,
fantastic.
yeah, yeah,
Hmm.
yeah.
I mean, that's a great way to start to feel safe, or to build the safety, right? To build a network. Um,
Yeah, it is. It is. And then I think I always say it really is you know, it is just being curious. It is
mm,
just, listening to other people, right? Um, because it's not only about you anymore. It's about connecting.
mm.
And yeah.
And what were you curious about? Just where they were from, what they're
Yeah, sure. Where they're from, why are they there?
mm,
Um, like uh what their interest, and and of course you might connect with somebody with a similar interest, or
mm, mm,
like, so where do you guys go, like, for a drink, you know and some of these guys were there for studies. They actually, there was this guy who was there for um he just rented that room while studying in Sao Paulo for 6 months.
mm.
He just stayed there, right?
Wow.
So I was just very curious. I just wanted to know, like, about everybody's lives. I mean, of course, if that's what they want to share, right? But
Mm,
it is about just listening and being curious, and then
mm,
um, exchanging like experiences.
mhm,
And a lot of times people have so much to share, like so much to tell, like stories. And I love listening to stories. So
mm,
yeah,
mm.
yeah,
So if somebody was thinking of traveling abroad or traveling anywhere,
yeah.
uh, but was a bit nervous about it, what would you share with them?
I would say, like I mentioned before, you know, go with a beginner's mind,
Mm,
like really just go there with wonder, with curiosity, and observe. I think the ability to observe is really, really important. Observe and listen, because it's like a gold mine out there if you can actually just listen and observe other people, and
mm,
then be curious, right? A lot of times when you first go to a place, you don't um like it can be overwhelming. It's a new language, it's a new culture, it's a culture shock, right? Like that you're not sure how to behave, right? And so
mm,
I I would advise, right, to go into your own, like, observation phase, and just go, like, observe and be curious and just listen to people, ask people to tell you stories, because people love telling stories, you
mm,
know. And if they don't speak the same language,
mm,
right, as you, then try a few words now and then. And I've actually been in places where I didn't even speak their language, and somehow we managed to communicate.
wow.
Um, we'll laugh about it, right? But it'd
Mm.
be like, you do the, they'll
Right.
grab your hands and they'll
Yeah.
go, and then we'll still have a great time. And they'll grab a hold of you and let's go, and then let's go dancing, then we'll dance. And that all of that is connection. It's not about, it doesn't have to be just be verbal, right?
Mm,
But it's so yeah, I say go with a beginner's mind, but with wonder, with that kind
mm.
of joyful wonder.
Is,
And yeah,
as we're talking, I'm wondering, for you, is the connection kind of the main thing that you're discovering when you travel?
yes, it is.
Mm,
It is. It's such a big thing for me, and
mm,
apart from being like a coach right now, I'm also like a communications consultant, and
mm,
so I've been working a lot um, you know, uh, with companies and teams that are very diverse, right?
mm,
Very
mm,
diverse. And I've seen, that when conversations go wrong, like simple conversations go wrong, either through different channels, right? With all the different cultures, the way different cultures will say things,
mm,
the German versus the Spanish. Do you know what I mean?
mm.
It can cause conflict,
Yes.
and So my job has always been to try to bring to find ways to navigate the diverse communication styles as well
Mm,
of
mm,
people, you know, how they strike out conversations to make sure that they're able to connect somehow, right?
mm, mm,
And because with connection they collaborate, isn't it? It's we
mm,
help each other out, right? So yes, social
mhm,
connection is such a big thing. Yeah, it is
mm,
probably my number one thing, and it is about, you know, not going to a country thinking I'm just going to speak, you know, English and everybody's going to understand me,
mhm.
right?
Yeah.
It's about going, speaking your English, but slowing down maybe because you need to communicate and keep it simple, right? And try with a few words here and there because that's how you connect. Try a few words of their language because that's when they appreciate and know that you respect, you know, their culture and you're trying to learn. I think when you show the eagerness to learn is when
Mm,
people start connecting. Yeah.
mm. Do, you- do, did you always have that belief that you could connect?
Yes.
Mm,
Yes. And well, I think that belief came after I flew flew away, you know, to study, right? I
mm,
used to be a very, you know, quiet person. You wouldn't even get a word out of me. Like that
mm,
was, I would to be too scared to go and ask somebody at the hotel for a favor. I would be too afraid. I would not talk. In fact, a friend of mine told me, like, what happened to you, Celeste? You changed so much. Now you're just
mm.
talking all the time. And and it's like, so I went from that.
Mm,
I just used to go like, hello, bye, you know, like something happened on my journey
mm,
that I started to build my confidence and I found my voice.
mm,
And once I found my voice and I realized that, huh, you know, everywhere I went to, like I managed to um, you know, somehow converse with people. It's not only my voice, but yes, you know, connect, right?
mhm,
And you know, to your question, it was just more like um, being able to communicate somehow,
mhm,
right?
mhm,
Um, and then connect. I think it's, yeah, a lot of it is about communication, I would say, how we have our conversations, how we are human, how we're kind to
mm.
each other.
Yeah, I was struck. I think now at this point in my life, kind of like you, I believe that I can connect, right? I believe that given some time with just about anybody that, you know, we can find some connection. We can find a way of hanging out and enjoying each other's company. Um,
Yeah.
I don't think that was always the case. And I think that can make it much more intimidating to travel.
Yes.
I think when I was younger, I was much more worried about like, oh, what if I make a mistake? I
Yeah.
wasn't thinking about connecting so much.
Yeah, and many of us have that actually. Um, I'm a trial and error person, so I don't care if I make a mistake.
mm,
Um, it doesn't bother me if somebody laughs at me because I said something wrong in the language.
mm,
At least I'm trying, right?
wow.
Um, but there are, and I know of many people who have like troubles, like, you know, coming out of that like fear of saying something wrong.
Mhm,
And because we tend to be perfectionists sometimes, right?
mhm.
So we're going to say something, it almost feels like we have to say a full sentence that is correct. Well,
Yeah.
that stops us in our tracks. We'll never say anything,
Yes.
right?
How did you
So
how did you grow that willingness to try something and that it doesn't bother you if somebody laughs at you? That's quite a special ability.
So I think it's more about honestly, I think it's more about like if you need to survive in a new place.
Mm. Mm.
I mean, it's survival. If you need to survive in a new place, you just do
If you
it,
need the
right?
toilet,
You
you
need.
got to find the toilet.
Can I tell you this story? You know, when we moved to Italy, right?
Mm.
I got ill. And I
Mm.
did not know what was happening with me, but I had all these ulcers in my mouth and
Mm.
I couldn't talk. I had, you know, I couldn't
Wow.
speak. And I didn't speak Italian then. I just got there. Um, so I literally had to go through the dictionary because at that time it wasn't Google Translate. I literally
Right.
went through this big, huge dictionary um, to write in sentences all the things I needed to tell a doctor.
Mm.
And then I called the doctor and I was reading, I read.
Mm. Wow.
Yeah. I had to, I didn't know what else to do. I had to read everything. And then, you know, the doctor came to the house and checked on me and, you know, I got the whole antibiotics and everything.
Mm.
But the bottom line is that when you have to survive and you have to do it, you just do it, right? And you,
That's a really good point. Like,
yeah.
I think there are moments where we have the luxury of not engaging. But, you know, when I was in a hotel last year and, you know, I did my laundry in the washing machine, but then the dryer wouldn't turn on. I wasn't just going to give up. I had to find out what's going on with the dryer.
So
Right.
what did you
So
do with
like,
the dryer?
unfortunately the dryer was broken. So I had to, you know, dry the old fashioned way that time. But in other words, I wasn't just going to go back to my room because I wanted the dryer. I needed the dryer. So
Yeah. Yeah.
that's a really good
You
point.
you do what you have to do, right? And I
Yeah.
remember people visiting me like from the US and you know, you're all used to dryers here, right? But you know, I was always working, but you know, living in like flats with no dryers, you know.
Right.
Um, I used to hang out, you know, all my clothes
Yes.
out on the line. And then I would have like visitors from the US going, "You don't have a dryer?" And I was like, "No,
Well, in
I
Japan,
just yeah."
most people don't have dryers. Almost everyone hangs the laundry.
Oh, really? In Japan
I
too?
mean,
Yeah.
you know, maybe now in like maybe in the center of the city, but even you would see big apartment buildings, and on the balconies, people hang the drawing. At least, and when I've gone there, you know, and there's a little pulley for the line, you know,
Oh,
and you
yes, yes.
and yeah, so I got used to that there. But I was a little surprised at first because yeah, in the States, I was used to having a dryer. So
I know. And then and
um
that's it, right? You get used to certain things and
yes,
you know, and you know that it shocks you, right? At first you're like, what are you gonna do? Like, I don't have this,
yeah,
you know. So it is, yeah, it is a matter of survival and just learning to do maybe what the people in that culture
yes,
do. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. When in Rome, right? So
When, when in Rome, I mean, there, you know, there's honestly, there's been like so many like things that I mean, and yes, and this is the thing, right? Eagerness to learn and just being open. And if if the dryer is not there in that country or something else is not the same as you know what you're used to at home, then it's more about taking a deep breath
yeah,
and just saying, okay, well, you know, I'm just gonna have to learn. And you know, oh, believe you me, I've been in situations where I've been complaining. I would be complaining, and I was just like, I hear myself. I'm like, you're just such a spoiled brat. Like, you know, I would be complaining, and I would be like angry, frustrated. I mean, in one day, I could be like, well, why is this not working the way it should be working? You know, why did the bank manager ignore me for 4 hours? You know, and but no, the bank manager didn't ignore me for 4 hours in Rio de Janeiro. She just forgot about me, right? Um, and so I would just, you know, when things are not working the way you're used to, your mind starts ticking like,
Yes.
oh, you know, oh, they're against me. Like, you know, she's ignoring me. And that it's just because you're just getting frustrated because it's not working the way you want it to. And I've been through that. Um, it's not all what do you call it? It's not all roses when you move to a new place.
It's not. And in my experience, you're going to make mistakes.
Yeah.
And there are going to be moments when people are going to look at you funny, and that's okay.
That's okay. Yeah.
I also learned it was funny in going to Japan. I learned not to interpret behavior too quickly for the good or for the bad.
Yeah.
You know, I think there's a lot of you know, when I talk to people about Japan, and I do love Japan, and I love the culture and everything, but there's good parts of the culture, there's bad parts of the culture, like any place, right? And I think people here romanticize the culture in Japan. And I had a funny situation where you know, there's a thing in Japan that you probably know, like if I drop my wallet on the train, in 2 hours, my wallet's going to be in one of two places. It's either going to be exactly on the train where I dropped it, or it's going to be in the station office, and everything is going to be divided up into neat little Ziploc bags for me, and they're going to contact me, and it'll probably be sent to my hotel. And
That's amazing.
it's amazing. It's amazing. And you know, you know, you don't want to be foolhardy, but if you're in a cafe in the middle of Tokyo and you leave your wallet on the table and go to the bathroom, most likely it will be there when you get back. And so I said to a friend who was Japanese, I said, you know, it's amazing how respectful people are, that they don't take your things. Now, my friend, even though she's Japanese, she's a bit cynical, but she said, oh, I don't think that's what's happening at all. And I said, what, you don't think they're respectful? And she said, well, I'm not saying they're not respectful. She said, I think most people don't take it because they would be afraid of shame if somebody noticed. Now, that's not a very romantic view of the same situation.
No,
right? But she said, you know, she said, I think it's a little bit of both. I think people do respect each other's property, but also they wouldn't want anyone to say, oh, look, they're trying to take something. And when I learned that, I realized it's very easy to misinterpret behavior.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And it's true. It is a cultural, like there's a cultural thing, isn't it? It's like, and it's easy for us to fall into this, negative thought play as well. When things
either
just
we're
don't
going
go
to
our way.
demonize it or romanticize it, right? So
yeah.
Well, I think that's a good place to pause for today.
Okay.
And thank you. That's wonderful. And I'm actually excited to listen back now, because I learn from this when I listen again and again, and sort of pick out gems from our chat. So thank you so much.
Thank you for our chat. It's been all fun.
and hello to Helga as well.
Hello, Helga.
Yeah. All right. Thank you so much.
Okay. All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.